Welcome, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, May 4th. It is Star Wars Day and Cinco de Mayo Eve. We usually have a meeting on Cinco de Mayo, but today, this year, we're a day early. Anyway, tonight we have a general meeting followed by a public hearing. We only have, and then followed by a general meeting again, right, Chairman? Yeah, and then by a general meeting again. So with that said, we're going to get started right into it. Our first item in our general meeting is the amendment of a business site plan number 281 special permit, Board of Education, 35 Leroy Avenue. And I think tonight for present this is going to be Jeremy, right?
I'll present this, and Dr. Adley can chime in if I leave anything out. You may recall when the Board of Education was approved to move to 35 Leroy, the commission approved that move in the decision in business site plan 281/special permit. At the time, there were really no plans to use much of the basement, so that P&Z approval way back when, maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, was a very limited use of the basement. Since that time, the town has reviewed the possibilities of the town using the basement because of the way it sits and the way it's situated relative to other things. The town has not been able to come up with a useful use. The Board of Ed would like to use it for both a copy room and storage. I think some draft floor plans were given to you from Silver Petrocelli, which are in your packets. And the Board of Selectmen at their April 20th meeting did approve the use of 3,039 square feet in the basement of 35 Leroy for use, care, maintenance, and operation by the Darien Board of Education. So I would recommend the commission amend its prior approval to allow the Board of Education to use that space as storage, copy center, bathrooms, and the details shown on that floor plan.
Whatever they want down there, right? We're giving it to them.
Dr. Adley, does that pretty much cover it?
Dr. Ginsberg, that does pretty much cover it very well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman O'Vaney. Thank you for the opportunity to hear this request. And I just point out to you that the most important day today is Teacher Appreciation Day today. So thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. That didn't make.
No, you're quite okay. I do want to say, in case I forget, thank the members of the commission for all of their help with recent projects, including the Oxford Building Committee. Very much appreciative of your support along the way with those projects. And if anybody has been to the Board of Education meeting, the copy center behind the Board of Ed is limited at best and distracting on many occasions. And this seems to be a nice use of the facility and for us to be able to relocate to that basement. I want to thank the Board of Selectmen. They also visited, First Selectman and Kate Bush visited the site not so long ago as we reviewed the request.
Fantastic. Thanks, sir. I like how you also call you Dr. Ginsberg.
Wow.
That's nice. Does any commissioner have any questions on this before we take a vote on it? No, seeing none. I told you. Can I get a motion to approve the request to put a copier in the basement? That's Carrie Gately looking for a second. Jennifer Leahy. Jim Rand's a third. All those in favor?
5-0. Thank you. To amend the prior approval. Great.
5-0 less. Right. And one abstention because he's not here. Fantastic. You're all set, Dr. Adley. You can move your copy.
Thank you very much, everyone. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You're welcome, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good thing.
Oh, Duke Denise. Thank you, Duke. No problem.
Thanks.
Okay. That's the suspension of the general meeting.
Yep.
And now we're going to go into the public hearing. First item in the agenda is proposed amendments to the Darien Zoning Regulations, COZR number 2-2020, put forth by Jeffery Brown, 26 Peach Hill Road. I'm not going to read the rest of this. Jeremy, what do you have?
Sure, and this is also the special permit application as well.
You want to read the next one too?
Yeah, if you could real quickly.
Then the next item on the agenda after that one, which these are related, is special permit application number 320 Jeffery Brown, 26 Peach Hill Road.
Okay, we, as you know, this is a continuation from a prior meeting. And since that last meeting, the neighbor, Mr. Hardy, has engaged counsel. Counsel has sent a letter to myself and Attorney Wilder Gleason, who represents Mr. Brown, There was an agreement by both parties to continue this public hearing to Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. online. This will give both parties time to work together to discuss the matter and try to come to a solution. So both these public hearings on the change of zoning regulations and the special permit for 26 Peach Hill will be immediately continued to Tuesday, May 25th, 7:30 p.m.
That's great news. Fantastic. Alrighty, next item up on the agenda. Proposed amendments to the Darien Zoning Regulations number COZR number 3-2021 put forth by the Darien Planning and Zoning Commission. That's us. Proposal to amend sections 456, 512, 514, 515, 528, 532, 547, and 577 of the Darien Zoning Regulations to eliminate the wording regarding specific parking standards and instead refer to the parking standards for multifamily housing established in sections 904 of the regulations. Proposal to amend section 904 of the Darien Zoning Regulations to reduce the amount of required parking for multifamily housing. The full text of the proposed zoning regulation amendment is on file and available in the town clerk's office and the planning zoning office for the inspection and online at www.darienct.gov/PZ pending applications. Right now, do you want to read the other ones in, then do them one at a time?
It's your choice. We can certainly do them one at a time. They're not really interrelated, but some of it would be repetitive, but I don't mind doing them one at a time.
Okay, and then we can do the public questioning to all three at the same time.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So, team, this is what we're going to do tonight. In the grand scheme of life, we have three zoning amendments that we're going to discuss tonight. Jeremy and Fred wrote up long memos on these things. We're going to take them one at a time, go through commissioner questions, comments, adjustments, ideas, and then after that, if anyone in the general public wants to speak to any or all three of these things, we're going to go from there. The guys put together a PowerPoint presentation. So, Jeremy, take it away, sir.
Sure. The first proposal, as Mr. O'Bandy mentioned, is proposal number 3, which is regarding multifamily parking standards. We'll get to the other ones in a little bit. So the details are all outlined in my April 14th memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the 4-page memo. Next slide, Fred. The details of the proposal are to amend a number of sections, which each contain specific parking standards, and try to just have as many districts as possible refer to section 904 of the regulations and come up with one section. And I wanted to make it clear that you can see the note here, the single family residential zones in Darien are not being modified as part of this proposal. R2, R1, R1/2, R1/3, R1/5, etc. So in this slide lists the many different zoning districts and sections of the regulations that have their own individual standards for multifamily housing parking, if you will, parking for apartments and condos, if you want to think of it that way. And so as we go through this presentation, you'll see that the current standards have developed over time. You may recall that prior to the mid-1980s, there was very little multifamily housing in Darien. And certainly in the past 20 years, you've all seen the chart noting that in the past 20 years, there's been about 800 new units coming online, which have come online.
866.
866 in 20 years. Avalon was 180 units, Kent's at 70 some units. We have the Heights at Darien, which was 100 units. We have Old Town Hall Homes, which is 55 units. So we've got a number of new multifamily projects in different zones. And with that has come many different standards, which we realize through time is, I don't want to say chaotic, but a little difficult to manage organizationally.
It just has one background, and I want to interrupt you. In a lot of other peer town zoning codes, parking is in one dedicated section.
Right.
Ours is different because it's in all over the place. The thing that we did with our last zoning regulation, I called the Fred charts or the Ovani charts, which in the back, we summarized all of the bulk regulations. It wasn't a change in the zoning code, it was an appendix. So this is along those same lines when we clean up zoning. And this is one of our tasks that we this is where this comes from. I'm sorry.
Right, and you've all seen this in your zoning regulations, which is section 904, which lists each individual use and how much parking is associated with that use. And that's a handy tool for reference. And if you start tucking little pieces in each different section, it becomes very difficult to find. So on this slide, you can see that in the, for example, the special needs housing zone, section 456, parking is based on 1 parking space per bedroom. While in section 512, the DBR zone, it's 2.5 spaces per unit in that zone. And on the next page, we talk about different standard in the DBR zone for elderly housing or moderate income housing. So you can see as Fred flips through that there's many different standards, and what we're trying to do is get some consistency the best we can where appropriate. So here on this page in the PowerPoint, we talk about section 515, where this section tosses in some verbiage about visitor parking, which is not found in section 904. So again, for consistency, whether to do it based on the unit or the number of bedrooms, whether to add visitor parking, it's all something we had to think about as we design a new standard. So for example, in section 528, the DMR zone. The DMR zone is Avalon, which you're all familiar with on Hollow Tree Ridge Road, has a standard for 2.5 spaces per dwelling unit. Now those are fairly large units. If you're familiar with Avalon, those are on the larger side. It's a mix of market rate and affordable there. But also section 532 of the regulations applies to land owned by the Darien Housing Authority, which has an even different standard. And that standard is 2 spaces per unit, which are entirely low and or moderate income housing. On the next page, we propose to change the standard, which is in the 3.7 acre Hollow Tree Ridge Road site. That is now the self-storage parcel. There's 2 apartments on that property. The standard currently in the regs is 2 spaces for each of those units. And then it's recommended that 1 additional parking space be included, okay? The section 577 deals with Kensit, the DCR zone. Kensit is one of the projects that's in that zone. In that zone, they require 2.5 spaces per unit, including spaces in a garage. So the following slide shows the existing wording, which is shown in item section 904B. You can see right there, Fred, yep. We show the existing wording being crossed out. The existing wording is 2.5 spaces for each dwelling unit as provided in section 512E. You're like, well, what if I'm not in 512E? So again, that type of wording has caused consternation in trying to get something easy for people to understand. And again, to summarize, the proposal is for 1 uniform standard for multifamily housing, which would apply to these 5 zoning districts, which you would see. Note at the bottom, we are not changing the Leroy West Affordable Housing Zone. That, as you know, is currently in pending litigation, and we've decided the prudent thing for the time being would be to leave that alone. So one thing on the next page is important to note, which is which you're familiar with, is currently there's a pending request as part of the Parklands proposal. They too made this part of their zoning regulation amendment. And I think that's something that we'll have to think about as we go forward. Is the town has made a proposal, which is the one before you tonight, and Parklands has made a proposal. Their hearing was continued to another night. But it's interesting to kind of look at what we've put forward as a staff, what Parklands has looked forward, and some of the comments we'll receive tonight. And the goal tonight, I think, is for all three of these public hearings to be continued, which would allow staff to continue to gather more input, feedback, study any further things the commission wants studied, and will allow us to come up with a good solution. But before we move on to the next item, I wanted to just mention a couple of things that the first is we did have to refer this to other agencies because it's a zoning regulation amendment. And we did refer it to WestCog. They sent a memo dated April 15th. The opinion of WestCog staff is that the proposal is of local interest with minimal intermunicipal impact. Therefore, it is not being forwarded to adjacent municipalities, and the regional staff is making no comment. We also sent it to the state of Connecticut DEP, City of Norwalk, Town of New Canaan, City of Stamford. No comments were received from any of them. We'll talk a little bit about how we believe this is consistent with the town plan of conservation and development, which on page 112 specifically requires or puts in as an action step, review the parking requirements in the zoning regulations. So that seems to be right on point. We did get one letter from a member of the public. It was an email from town resident Craig Flaherty, dated May 4th. On this matter, we forwarded that to the commission earlier today, posted it to the town website, and included it as part of the file. So that is proposal number one.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
Before you move on? One is atria. When we did the expansion of atria, I think that's 0.85 per dwelling unit. Is that inside here too?
I think
'Cause I
atria
didn't
would be
see it.
considered separately. I think there's a separate standard, but I just want to double check that. That's a good question.
Okay. Then the second item is just so everybody is on the same page. All these parking regulations, we have three projects that are going on right now, which is Palmer's, Federal, and Corbin District. Those three projects have the basis of this parking that we have that exists today, but because they're shared parking agreements, those were specially designed based upon a shared parking agreement. So that's another
Right, we're going to
mix of stuff.
Right, at the next hearing, we'll drill down a little more on Federal Realty. Right on their plans, they put a little chart about parking, which talks about how much is there for the commercial, residential. They included 2.5 spaces per unit. And then the total was reduced by the commission
By a factor.
Which we'll have to look at.
Right. So that's not, it's, remember, some of our regulations are stringent, but because those big projects have shared parking between commercial and residential, that's why they don't have 2.5 spaces.
So we're going to continue that. That was a request from Federal Realty, was can you take a closer look at that and figure out how that might or might not affect their project. Similarly, assisted living, I'm going to have to read whether, I don't think they were put in under this, but I do want to go, that's another one I want to research between now and the continuation of this hearing.
Okay. Fred, do you mind going back to the PowerPoint? I just want to write down my notes what Parklands suggested, because I think we're more lax than Parkland. Parklands has got more parking that we're proposing today.
Right, if you go back one slide, Fred.
One more slide. They ordered
Right
it
there,
wrong.
there you go.
One more.
One more.
One more. There you go, bingo.
Right.
Okay, so here we're saying 1 space per studio, right? And 1 bedroom, and they're asking us for 1.5. So they have more parking than we do, or than this does. We don't have anything right now. And for a 2-bedroom, they were asking for 2 spaces, and we're asking for 2 spaces too, right? So you're kind of consistent, except they're putting 1-bedrooms.
They put a little, built in a little more flexibility.
Yeah, their 1-bedrooms have 2 spaces. Our
So if you
1-bedrooms
look
have
at,
1 space.
in terms of stringent, we're here. the Parklands proposal's here, and we would be, this proposal is
Right,
the
yes.
least stringent,
Yes.
or the most flexible, if you want to look at it
Sure.
that way. And that's going to be, we'll do research if commission members want us to look at anything specific. And then what we'll do, as I said, at the continuation, all 3 hearings will be continued. We can come back and answer any questions, and any feedback or input from the public tonight, we can circle back on that as well.
And the only last thing I wanted to mention relative to this is some developers that do build stuff, they want more parking for their own benefit. Like I remember when Baywater did theirs, they wanted 2 spaces per apartment because they think they're going to be snowbirds. And when Jim Rand moves in there, he's going to have his car and his wife's going to have her car, and they don't share cars. Okay, is that it for this one? I'm sorry, does any commissioners have any questions on this document, this first one? COZR number 3, is that what this is? Yeah, number 3. If you do, turn on your light, your camera. Larry, go ahead, Larry.
Just a general comment or question. In the places where that have already been approved, that are up and running and existing, what's the experience been? Is parking going unused? Is there not enough parking? Have we heard anything back from, is there any data of that nature?
Well, why don't you go to an example that you had up a second ago, but you didn't talk to it, which was Guard Homes.
Yeah, Larry, that's a good question, because the one that is this slide here talks a little bit about Garden Homes, which is at 397 Boston Post Road. That was an 8-30G application, which the commission approved. And let me just get the numbers for you. That is 35 very small apartments. It's kind of an unusual situation because the average size of all the apartments is 448 square feet, which is basically the exact size of a 2-car garage would be the size of your where you live, 2-car garage. So in that case, I don't have the exact number of parking spaces. I think it was 53. So it was a little less than 1.5 a unit. And that was kind of a concern, is that's not a lot of parking. But I've been back there and I've talked to the owner, and they've never had a parking problem, if you will. I think it's because of the nature of the unit, and most of them are studio or 1-bedrooms. So of the 35 units, 16 are studios, 18 are 1-bedrooms. That's the experience I've had with Garden Homes. Avalon, as you know, is a much bigger project,
Right.
189 units. They have about 500 parking spaces, many garages. You've seen the detached garage buildings all over the property. There's a lot of just at-grade parking for visitors. From what I've seen, they're overparked. They have too much parking. Those are generally much larger units than Garden Homes. Avalons are 2,000, Steve, maybe
Well, 1,200.
1,200, which is a good size unit. It's a mix of, I think, 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units.
Yeah.
There's no studios at Avalon. So the units are bigger, but the parking required is much bigger. So we've been fortunate. We have not had any parking situations that I'm aware of for Kensett, Avalon, Garden Homes, the Housing Authority projects. We haven't had problems with those.
Kensett's tight.
Kensett's a little tight. Everything's
tight.
tight.
They did on purpose to slow down cars, though.
It does slow down cars. What happens is, I think everyone at Kensett has
There's
2
a
garage
garage.
bays. So sometimes people park their cars outside, so it looks like there's a lot of cars. But I know there were a lot of worries, Larry, at Allen O'Neill, which is now called the Heights of Darien, about the need for cars to park in the street. And I have not seen that. That may occur on an occasional basis. But
Who
not,
parks on the street? I'm sorry.
there was concern when the Heights of Darien was being proposed.
Okay.
That people would park on the street. And there is some parking on the street, but not really on West Avenue or
Okay.
Norotan Avenue.
There's always enough parking there.
Yeah, so that seemed to have worked. It's a good question, Larry, and I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah, so to summarize, it sounds like in general, there's more parking than we need across the board at all these units. So lowering the standards might, having more flexibility, I should say, seems to be the right direction to go in.
Right, we have to find that right balance. And, if there does become a parking problem, once you have the parking problem, it's almost impossible to get rid of. So we have to make sure we don't create one.
Yep. Okay.
I would also note that these parking regs that are being proposed here are consistent with the ITE standards for parking for multifamily. Mike Galante and his associates submitted some correspondence, a letter for the record, detailing the consistency of this proposal with the ITE standards.
Yeah, Fred, just on that point, I'm looking at that memo, and I read it, which stated Monday, February 22nd, but I didn't really read in here where it said what the ratio should be. Am I missing something? Because, that's what it says, please attach, find the pages. We just didn't get the attached pages.
Yeah, it's possible that we did not attach the pages to.
Okay, but I believe you if you say that the numbers are consistent.
We'll get that out to you.
Okay, that's cool. Anybody else have any questions on the parking? Okay, I'd say we move on to the
Want
next
to go to
one.
the public or do the public at the end?
The public at the end.
Okay, great. So,
I'll read the next one into the record. Great.
Yep.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is proposed amendments to the Darien Zoning Regulations, COZR number 4-2021, put forth by the Darien Planning and Zoning Commission. Proposal to amend sections 583, 588, and 589 of the Darien Zoning Regulations to clarify the inclusionary standards pertinent to both multifamily and single-family uses, and that the standards would be triggered via 4 or more units or building lots for subdivision. Proposal to increase the amount of deed-restricted below-market rate units required as part of an inclusionary project from 12% to 14%, and to modify Appendix E as in Edward, the regulations according to the proposed change for affordable units and affordable housing units to below-market rate units. God bless you. The full text of the proposed zoning regulation amendment is on file and available in the town clerk's office and on the planning zoning office for inspection and online at www.darienct.gov/PZC pending applications. This was an idea that came up for a while. If you guys remember, I've had those meetings or calls or sessions with other towns, our peer towns. Westport, I think, is 20% affordable on all their inclusionary. Greenwich is crafting theirs now. 830G is 30%. The state regulations is 10%. So I asked Jeremy and company to look at it. We started with, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, changing the number to what it is. At the end of the day, it helps us to get more units quicker. There's some other wording in there that's changed. Everyone else calls them BMRs, which is below market rate units, not affordable housing rate units. So that's language cleanup. And it's, because we have a 4-number trigger, that really 1 unit constitutes 20%. So if like John Vicar is doing a 4-unit building, it's automatically 20% out of the box, and it's a sliding scale. At the end of the day, change it from 12% to 14%, we might get 1 more unit on like an 8-unit project. It's not a big difference. Optically, it looks better. And if we can pick up a unit here or there, which really doesn't affect any economics that way, or some partial units, because that's where Appendix E comes in. That's the good part about it. So with that said, Jeremy, take it away.
Sure. As Steve mentioned, there's really 3 topics we're covering as part of this proposal. One is to clarify that the inclusionary zoning standards pertain both to multifamily and single-family uses, if you do 4 or more, and reiterate that it's 4 or more units constructed. They've increased the amount of deed-restricted below-market rate units or affordable units. I don't want to use the term interchangeably. We'll talk a little bit about that. To modify Appendix E of the zoning regulations, which is really the calculation for the fee in lieu. And to clean up the wording and make the wording consistent, if you read section 580, sometimes we use the word affordable or affordable housing unit, and sometimes we use the word below market rate unit. So this will make that consistent. So in the next slide, we talk about in May 2009, which is about 12 years ago, Town of Darien originally adopted inclusionary zoning as part of its regulations. And we were one of the leaders in the state to do that. It's really not too many communities in the state of Connecticut have it. Stamford is very big. It's gained a lot of units in Stamford, but most communities only now are starting to implement such a thing. There's been a number of changes through the years. Those are outlined on this slide rather, as the need has occurred through the years to modify it, tweak it. You can see there was one change in 2016, which changed the requirement for area median income to state median income. Again, that was a desire to start getting moratorium point credit for the inclusionary units that we're creating. It lowered the max income you could have to live in such a unit.
And that was Sini and Eric Voigt doing that to comply with state standards.
Right, it makes it more consistent because the state uses state median income.
Correct.
So the next slide shows some of the what we're trying to do, what we're aiming to do as part of this proposal. Clarify that the regulation pertains both to multifamily and single family, if you're doing 4 or more units. Changing the references for consistency from affordable to below market rate. Increase the amount of deed restricted affordable units, as Steve said, from 12% to 14%. And modify example E, or the example in Appendix E. The proposal was all outlined in my April 14th memo to you. Again, we referred this out to WestCog. They came back with the exact same comment, actually, which is no intermunicipal impact. Therefore, it's not being forwarded to adjacent municipalities, and the regional staff is making no comment. That was the WestCog email comment of April 15, 2021. We also referred it to the state of Connecticut DEP, City of Norwalk, Town of New Canaan, City of Stamford. No comments received. And we, again, believe this is consistent with the Town Plan of Conservation and Development. When you look at page 98 and page 106, which talks about providing for a range of housing types, efforts to diversify Darien's housing portfolio, ways to provide for housing that's more affordable. Again, by requiring the inclusionary unit or the fee in lieu, it really gives Darien an opportunity to create more affordable housing, which is, or in this case, you may recall David Genovese built supportive housing for developmentally disabled. He did that as part of his inclusionary. So that's also in the town plan. So I believe that these changes are consistent with the Town Plan of Conservation and Development on the pages I mentioned. Any questions on this?
Just as another example, New York City is 80-20. They call them 80-20 buildings in Manhattan. Like I said, we're 88-12 now. I think Stanford's 85-75.
Yeah, I do want to note for the record, we did get a letter, which we forwarded to the commission dated May 3rd, 2021, from Robert Gillen with his comments on the inclusionary zoning proposal. His comments were more towards a proposed effective date. And I think as part of any zoning regulation amendment, the commission's got to think about what you use as an effective date of the new regulation, whether it's for any of the proposals we discussed tonight.
And yeah, relative to that, inside the parking, you didn't have an effective date in that memo.
We have not suggested one at this point. Again, we're going to continue all of these hearings. I think I'm looking at a date of, let me just double check so we can announce those now.
Or would you make all 3 effective the same date, do you think?
It could be.
Okay.
Could be. I think we're going to continue these hearings. Fred, did we talk about June 8th?
Yes, I believe that is the date.
Okay. So for those who are interested in any of these, we haven't even presented the third one yet. We're going to continue all of them till June 8th Tuesday, June 8th at 7:30 p.m.
Okay, and then just to clarify, in your memo that everybody got relative to this, these guys did not attach Appendix E because it's a mathematical calculation document, and if it goes from 12 to 14, then they can run the numbers on how it goes 12 to 14, and you can look at the math. By going just as an example, at 12% for an 8-unit project, you get 0.96 affordable units, which we round up to 1. At 14% for an 8-unit project, you get 1.12 units. So that 0.12 units that we're getting, that's basically going to be cash.
Right. The
Right.
rounding error is
That's cash.
fee in lieu.
When's the break point? Is it at a half? Okay, so do we have to put that in
round
here?
error. We can clarify by putting that in.
Okay. So the example is if it's 1.49 or 49, you can give cash. If it's 0.51, you round up to 2, and that's consistent with other towns. For argument's sake, on a 9-unit project, you're going to have 1.08 housing units, so you're getting cash at 12%. For 14% on a 9-unit project, you're getting 1.26%. So the only difference is 0.4 of a unit in cash. Mill River Park in Stanford, all the money that they got basically for the housing trust fund, that's what funded Mill River Park. If you ever go over there, with our money, we gave the biggest chunk to
Right.
the Royal.
Right. The only person that paid fee in lieu was David Genovese for his project at 745 Post Road.
Which is also 830G, isn't it? I think it's
No.
it's not an 830G. Okay.
So that was $362,000, and that money ended up going to help subsidize the Royal at Darien, which was 55 deed restricted affordable units.
Okay. Any questions from any commissioners on this one? Jen, you looking to say something? No? You okay? Larry, any questions? George, Jim, Kara, you good?
Well, just on those sort of like, you kind of were talking about it already, but if the percentage or the required units changes, how does that change the fee in lieu? I know you're talking about how, depending on the percentages, there would be cash if the round, you round up and this, but how would the fee in lieu change at all or just stay the same?
The amount of money you get, I think, is a little bit more. Because it's a percentage item, but the dollar numbers and inside the example
Stays the same. So the percentage of affordable changes, but the percentage of fee and
Would also increase.
yeah,
What
the
we'll
amount of
do-
cash is going to increase.
I think
I'm not specifically asking about cash. I'm more asking like if they were going to pay the fee instead of building the units, would there be a subsequent or a consistent change as well?
I think what we'll do as part of the continued hearing is drill down, as Steve mentioned, and put that right in Appendix E so you can see how it all shakes out. I think that's a great idea. So we'll have that ready for next time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, it's like I said, it's not a whole lot. You're not talking about millions of dollars. That's sure. Okay, next item.
Steve,
yeah.
just quick question. Because as I've been learning more and more about this topic over time, I'm just wondering if you can help me understand one thing. When we say something is in a below market unit or an affordable unit, and it's available to someone who's making, in some cases 80% of the state median average.
Yep.
That tells me who's able
Correct.
to go into these things. What is really unclear to me is what does that mean in terms of what they can be charged for rent?
That's in that document.
I've literally looked and I can't find it anywhere.
I will also get that. That's a very good question, Larry, because it's two parts. They can only get charged up to, basically it comes up to 30% of their income. So basically what we'll do is get that for you so everyone has an understanding of what the state median income is now, what the max income for someone living there would be, and how that would translate to the max rents that could be charged. I think that's also important to have for next time.
It's in Westchester, it's the state publish it, the county publishes it. It's a cockamamie formula, but it's really based upon your income. And there's also, from the rent, they deduct all the utilities. And if like an apartment complex charges for trash and water, that gets deducted from the rent and the rent goes down. It's a convoluted process, but the people that are really good at this know exactly what to do.
Yeah, but we'll get that data for you, Larry. That's a good question.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Jen, your lights on? You good? Okay, let's keep moving then. Alrighty. Last one for this part is proposed amendment to Darien Zoning Regulations CRZR number 5, put forth by the Darien Planning Zoning Commission. Proposal to amend sections 504, 525, and 544 of the Darien Zoning Regulations to eliminate reference to required minimum square footage floor area of residential dwellings in the DBR, DMR, and 3.7 AH zones. The full text of proposed zoning regulations amendment is on file and available in the town clerk's office and the planning and zoning office for inspection online at www.dariencT.gov/PZC pending applications. So what happens in a lot of towns is they set floors and ceilings of how big these apartments can be. We raised the ceiling on how big they could be a couple of years back. As way of an example, Middlesex Commons, those units were some of the first ones that were built in town, and those are condos. They're so small, like they're mostly one bedrooms. People were buying 2 and combining them. When I lived in Manhattan, I bought an apartment, then I bought the second apartment and combined them to make mine bigger. So we raised that number based upon market standards and market practices because people want bigger units. The other number that's in there is the small units. In certain towns, they want you to build small units. If you remember the Michael Bloomberg in New York City, he lowered the units there to make them micro units. There's a project in Sanford called the Irby, which is the units are really, really small, but the amenities are huge. So the idea is it's really a hotel room. The kitchens are tiny, everything's tiny, and you go out to the, so, and it kind of comes out to affordability. If market rent is $3 a foot for 1,000 square foot apartment, that's $3,000 a month. If it's a 500 square foot apartment, it's, and the market rent stays the same, that's $1,500 a month. So you're making more affordable apartments if they're smaller. So that's the concept behind it. The thing that was interesting, I think on the Parklands application, I think their smallest units are 496 square feet.
Right, it differs by, as you said, Steve.
Right.
We're seeing more and more differing, I'll call it diverse types of multifamily housing.
Right.
The example I mentioned earlier tonight is garden homes, in which each dwelling unit or each unit is the size of a 2-car garage, or many of them are smaller.
Right.
You mentioned they're Irby, similarly. So we had these districts in Darien, the DBR zone, the DMR zone, and the 3.7 AH zone, which had minimum floor areas. And certainly to allow for the greatest amount of potential housing diversity, we said, you know, why don't we eliminate those and really leave it up to the developer for their choice on how they want to build, instead of putting this, I'll call it artificial 600 square foot maximum. Again, we specifically excluded the Leroy West affordable housing zone as part of this. But so we're just changing the zoning regulation minimum in 3 districts. And again, the reference here is Garden Homes, which has 16 studio apartments. With, you know, with small units, they're likely to be studio apartments, maybe a 1-bedroom. But really, there was those sold out pretty quickly, and there is increasing demand we're seeing for small units. And so it really, again, it goes towards housing diversity, flexibility for builders and developers. Again, consistent with the other proposals, we did this, refer this to the other agencies, including WestCog, who sent their April 15th memo saying the opinion of WestCog staff is that it's of local interest and minimal intermunicipal impact. Therefore, it is not being forwarded to adjacent municipalities, and the regional staff is making no comment. We also referred it to the state of Connecticut DEP, City of Norwalk, Town of New Canaan, City of Stamford. They had no comments. And on the next slide, we talk about how this proposal is consistent with the Town Plan of Conservation and Development, which is important for the Planning and Zoning Commission to note in whatever decision you end up making. But basically, page 106 talks about the continued efforts to diversify Darien's housing portfolio, consider ways to address the housing needs of an aging population that might not need a very large unit. So there are provisions, which you see on that slide, in the town plan, which references. We talked earlier about effective dates. At the next hearing, we'll talk more about it, but that's going to be an essential piece of whatever your decision is, what the effective date. So again, we were looking to continue all three of these hearings to Tuesday, June 8th at 7:30 p.m., which would allow time for further study and analysis and give staff time to respond to whatever questions, feedback, input we get tonight. So
The only other thing I want to add to that too, I have the garden homes, not garden homes, the Parklands design plans in front of me. Their studio apartments are 475 square feet. So if we take out the 600 square feet, even though they don't have a zone, and it's not even approved, that makes that a regulation. The only thing that's for you to know too, and Jen might know this too, these square footages, if they're really small, could never be condos. Well, they can be condos, but it's very hard to finance. The minimum size for a condominium to get FHA or FHA mortgage is like 450 square feet. The apartment that I bought in the city, where I said earlier, I got a second apartment. That second apartment couldn't get a mortgage on it because it didn't make the FHA rules. So either you're financing privately or you're paying cash for it. So these can never be tiny, tiny condos because FHA won't take the mortgages. Go ahead, Kara, what's up?
So I guess I have a couple questions, and it's just more for my clarification and understanding. So if we're reducing the square footage requirements for these specific zones, just so I understand it, and I think you kind of said this earlier with respect to the parking, this provides greater flexibility by lowering the floor, but developers, based on market forces or whatever their sort of design or their, what they're seeing in terms of market, lending requirements like Steve just spoke about, can build builder. It just makes the regs more flexible and more consistent among the various zones in town. Do I understand that right?
Exactly right. I mean, in my professional opinion, I don't think you're going to see a lot of these in things that are less than 500 square feet. But
I'm just trying to understand, the impact and the sort of not collateral consequence, because this is like a direct consequence, right? We're trying to create more regulatory flexibility, which doesn't impede development. Developers can build bigger. It just makes any hurdle and regulatory red tape sort of a bit easier, but they can still have the discretion to build bigger or do whatever. They just can't build smaller, which might be unsafe for like fire or other kind of, right?
Yep, you're spot on.
Okay, and then I guess my other question, so we talked, so then on the three zones that are specifically listed, I guess my question is, and I really do, because I sort of get a little, there's a few points that kind of always sort of irk me, right? Parking, changing regs for a specific applicant, and like having inconsistencies throughout our well thought out regulations. So these three zones that are specifically listed in the proposed reg change, are those the only three zones in town that have minimum square footage requirements built into them currently?
yes. Well,
Okay.
and the Leroy West zone. So there's only 4, and we're changing 3.
Okay, so we're changing the 3 that have them, and then the other zones in town either don't have them because they don't have residents, they are service business, they're business districts,
Or there are other housing districts that there is no minimum.
Okay. I think that's my, oh, and then I guess with respect to the one zone that we left out, right, the Leroy, and we left that out because we think this may affect them adversely in the future, or we just thought it was unnecessary. I just want to hear, I mean, I don't have an issue with it. I'm just sort of.
No, it's a good question. I'm glad you covered it.
Just say it again.
It's, as you know, there's currently pending litigation regarding the Leroy West district. And
Got it.
we're discussing it with council. We said, you know what? Best not to change the regulations on a situation like that.
Understood. And then once litigation is resolved.
We could circle back to that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The other thing relative to this, there's a bunch of commas missing in 2,00 for 2000. That's all.
Yep, we're gonna take a look at that.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions on these three proposals? Okay. Seeing none, I would like to open this up to the members of the general public. Does anyone in the public domain have any questions, comments on any of the potential proposed zoning amendments that we just put forth, which is going to be COZR number 3 with regards to parking, COZR number 4 with regards to inclusionary housing percentages and some cleanup, and COZ number 5, which is with regards to minimum unit size. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand, turn on your camera, turn on your microphone, or anybody in the chat. There's somebody in the chat.
Yeah.
It looks like we have no comments from the public. Okay.
Great, so we'll continue them all to June 8th. It'll give staff a little time. Is there?
I'm so annoying. I know I'm annoying. The only other thing I would ask is I noticed that channel 79 is not on, and I just think that this would have been something that would have been interesting to the public, especially since we're not meeting in person, in town hall. These reg amendments to our town regulations are sort of really timely and important and have been discussed widely, both on the national and statewide and local level. And I'm just curious, when does it get decided? What gets aired live, broadcast, and what doesn't? I don't know. I mean, no one here knows, but I just thought this would have been something that would have been really timely and of interest to the public, and something that, the public should be able to hear and see.
Well, we will, Fred, as you know, is recording it, and we'll post the recording to the town website. And Mr. Jim Cameron usually publicizes what's discussed. So, and as I said, having a second hearing should help that as well.
Yeah, Jim Cameron decides what he wants to put on live.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I just think it's important that this is something that I think it's been so widely discussed, and there's been so much interest, and local talks about it, and that it would have been something of interest, maybe for people who can't.
Does the Board of Education have a competing meeting with us, and they got the airtime? We didn't.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Dr. Adley was here, so I don't know.
But I think he's gone. Relative to the only other one that's on our agenda that we're going to look at some point in time, and we're not ready yet, is the accessory dwelling unit, which I know is some of us have talked about in a while. Most of our other towns have accessory dwelling units that are approved. Those regulations vary drastically between percentages and sizes and uses and whatnot, and attached to houses and not attached to houses. So it takes a little bit more research, but that's going to be on one of our agendas in the near future. I'd like to get it done, maybe before.
We're aiming to get it done. Well,
it's going to be tight. If we can clear out some of these applications, we're going to see later tonight. Maybe we can find time, but
we're working on it.
We're working on it. So I think that answers any question. Oh, I see Jamie Stevenson arrived. Ms. Stevenson, do you have any questions on any of these items? Or are you just observing? You are ex officio.
Yes, thank you so much. I'd actually like to just take 60 seconds to lend my voice of support for these regulation changes.
Awesome.
Certainly making it a bit easier and more economical for developers to develop here in town by reducing the mandatory or minimum parking standards, And I'm a big fan of the success of the inclusionary zoning regulation. I think it's been very successful for our town in being able to develop or require the development of affordable housing throughout our town. So I want to applaud the Planning and Zoning Commission for your work in taking up these regulation changes. I support them both, and I look forward to your further deliberations and for the discussions about accessory dwelling units in the future. Thank you.
Hey, Jamie, just for we have a third one too with the size one. You like that one too? Or you have any comments on that one? The minimum size?
I don't have any comments tonight, but I'll get back to you on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're ready to move on?
Move on, Jerry.
Jerry, so we're taking questions right now or comments relative to the zoning regulations? You just turn your mic on. Do you have any questions relative to this?
Yeah, Steve, no, I just want to let you know that as a business owner in this
Jerry Nielsen, right?
yes.
Okay, Jerry Nielsen from Bell Circle. Thank you, sir.
Jerry Nielsen, owner of the Nielsen Company and the Thorndale Circle Office Park, and you're talking about my zone. And I just want to let you know that I think from a town's perspective that you're doing the right thing. It's very timely, and I will talk more probably on June 8th about this, but I think it's a really good thing for our town to be proactive and have more inclusionary zoning. I think it's gonna be a good thing for the town.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate those comments, sir. Would anybody else like to comment in any of these topics? I think seeing none, we can move on to the next item.
Yep, we'll see everyone June 8th for all three of the zoning regulation amendments. June 8th, 7:30 p.m.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. That's the end of our public hearing for tonight. Now we're going to go back into the general meeting, time permitting. And just for the record, it is 8:30. We're doing good tonight, folks. Deliberations only on the following. Proposed amendments to the Darien Zoning Regulations, COZR number 4, 2020, business site plan application number 128B as in boy, special permit application number 314, 711, Inc., 306 Boston Post Road. Okay, this is our third night of deliberations,
I believe so.
I think this is going to be our third night of deliberations on the 711 application. If you guys remember, the 711, so to speak, application's got two pieces. One is a text amendment change to the zoning code, and then the other one is the site plan issues and special permit. We do have another memo from Jeremy Ginsburg relative to the COZR text amendment stuff, and I want to let him speak to that. And then again, we have, these are different green sheets, right?
No, they're the same as last time.
Same, okay, same green sheets as last time. Page 1, page 2. No, okay, yeah, meeting number 2, number 3. So with that said, I'm gonna let you take over and walk us through where we are.
Sure. Our goal here is for the commission to deliberate further this evening and vote next week, which is Tuesday, May 11th. So what Fred Donite, senior planner, and myself are doing is trying to gather, based on these deliberations, the commission's comments. You've deliberated a number of times on the zoning regulation amendments. So what we've tried to do is put that in writing for you to read through, because that's really where we need to start with this, because that will drive the special permit and site plan in many ways. Some of the issues that the applicant has proposed relate to obtaining those zoning amendments, the quick service restaurant, the way that gas stations are treated, accessory uses, principal uses. So really, that's the first question the commission needs to look at when deciding this. And once we can fine tune that, it allows Fred and myself to then continue working on drafting the site plan and special permit decision. What we foresee is two separate decisions, one on the zoning regulation amendments, the other on the site plan special permit. Certainly, as you know, zoning regulation amendment proposals, if you do adopt them, will have an effective date. And in this case, you can adopt everything. You can adopt some of it. You can adopt some of it with modifications, or you can deny the whole thing. So based on what we heard from the commission at the prior meetings, we tried to put that all in writing. And that's what we wanted to go through with you this evening, was make sure that we properly put in writing the consensus of the commission such that we can finalize that for next week's meeting. And consistent with that, put together the details in the site plan and special permit approval. So what we took from the commission's past deliberations was that you wanted to deny the zoning changes in part and adopt others in part with modifications. And so you may recall we walked through those various amendments. In here, of course, the commission must cover whether the proposal is consistent with the town plan of conservation and development. So that needs to be covered in its decision with certain specific findings. So we wanted to walk through this tonight, make sure it accurately reflects the commission, each of the proposals put forth by the applicant. And as I said, we expect a vote next week.
Can we go page by page?
Sure, let's go page by page.
Do you guys mind? I want to just go page by page. And starting at the first page, you have this one thing in bold at the bottom of the first page. Is that bold
Right.
for a reason? Something you're in it or
In the
no?
middle?
Yeah.
In the middle, because what we wanted to make it clear is because there's going to be two separate decisions,
Okay.
that this is the zoning decision, and there will be a separate site plan special permit decision.
Okay. And then on the bottom, just so you know, where it says, date of action, May 11th, 2021, adopted report with modifications, effective date, blah, 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 denied report. That's the conclusion on page 1, but we're going to go through this whole thing now, and that conclusion could effectively change based upon what we talk about right now. Okay. Any questions on page 1? Everyone got this, right? We're good? Okay. Page 2, I want to talk a little bit. You mind? Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. Page 2 is a little bit of history and about the proposal. It talks about the size of the restaurant, the fact that Duchess is going to be raised, as in demolished, not raised as in lift up. That there hasn't been any gas station in Darien for 30 years. They haven't really touched this in 30 years. And this, they're looking to establish on the bottom, a level consistent with other gas station convenience store approvals decided by the commission in prior years. That's part of the applicant's proposal. Okay. Any questions on that page? If you do, just scream. I got my head down if you want to. I'm on page 3. Neighbors' concern voiced at the public hearing. This talks about in number 7 in the middle. It talks about what it has to comply with, and that's really goes to the site plan piece, right?
Right.
So we're going to get through this piece and then on the site plan piece. And then if you look at the bottom of the last sentence on number 6, it says the commission will review and decide the site plan and special permit applications proposal in a separate written decision. It is the site plan would have to comply with those 4 items. Okay. And then on the bottom, it's depending on nature proposed, other sections of zoning regulations could be triggered, but a minimum, all of those things above would have to apply. All right. Then it gets into the part that to me is pretty important. Number 8, the commission notes that there's nothing specific in the 2016 Town Plan of Conservation Development regarding motor vehicle service stations or gas stations. The proposals put forth by the applicant vary widely and described in greater detail in finding number 9. Okay, you want to take over from here and start
Sure.
there?
What we did in finding number 9, which is really the heart of the matter, we went through each of the applicant's proposals one by one and discussed them and tried to relay the commission's consensus. So as you can see, the first was to amend the definition of motor vehicle service station. And we talked about the applicant's proposal, a little description, and what we believe that based on the deliberations, what the commission's consensus is. So in this case, for number 9A, we said the commission believes that such a change is logical and is keeping with what appears to be going on, and the commission finds that this proposal, the change in the definition, is consistent with the 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development. That's the end of page 3.
So what they did in most of these bullet points, it's going to say is, are, is not, or was, or depending if it's plural or singular. Okay, keep going. Thank
Want
you.
to keep going, or you want
Please, no,
just keep going?
this is important. I want you to do this
Okay.
part.
9B was about the quick service restaurants, which eliminating the 1,200 square foot requirement. It talks about the fact that the current regulations require 1,200 square foot of indoor space. The proposal would allow smaller. The commission says, no, that's directly contrary to past policy established by the commission. Thus, the commission finds it's not consistent with the 2016 town plan to allow the small quick service restaurant.
Okay, this came up once before. Do you want to tell these guys that? Remember when Heights Pizza was going to move? That was a big deal. We dealt with this, remember?
Heights Pizza was on, wanted to go right across the street from Rings End Road.
Right, we dealt with that and we denied it there too, didn't we?
I can't remember if that was a zone change. Might have been a zone change. I'd have to take a look at that.
Okay.
Let me
This issue with regards to size for quick service restaurants, this is not our first time looking at it. And the last time we might have tweaked it a little bit. So the point of that story is that we really studied this and went over it and made a decision. That's where the number comes from. So
Steve, I can note that the Heights Pizza application was in fact a zone change application, and the applicant in Heights Pizza had proposed to reduce the minimum area for customer seating area, and I can't remember specifically what was being proposed in terms of the square footage, but it was a reduction from the required 1,200 square feet in the service business district.
right, but wasn't a proposal to take it down to 100, right?
No, it wasn't. And it wasn't called quick service then, but as Fred said, there was, as you've noted, some similarities between
Right.
that.
We played with
I
this.
think that was eventually withdrawn, but there are some similarities in how the commission looked at it and things like that. So
Great. Okay.
C, 904W, the parking standard for motor vehicle service stations. This is the proposal to distinguish between stations that include automotive repair and those that do not, trying to clarify the parking regulations. The current zoning regulations require that motor vehicle service stations have 14 spaces and a disabled vehicle storage area. So we talked about the applicant's request to modify the regulations in the case where a gas station does not have automobile repair. So I think the last sentence here is in this paragraph is screwed up.
No, it says the commission for the.
No, the last paragraph down below. I got it. I'll keep reading this. It says the commission confirms that there is currently no parking standard for a standalone gas station with no auxiliary uses, such as convenience store. If you can envision this, for example, the closest thing we would have now would be the gas station near Shake Shack. It has a number of gasoline pumps and a very small convenience store, which is
450 square feet.
it's probably the size of the room Steve and I are sitting in now. It's not much bigger than that.
So you can't go inside.
You can go inside, but it's not much more than that. So the question there is, you can't really spend a lot of time in there because it's so small. There's no public bathroom in there or anything like that.
Mhm.
So we could not think of a gas station only situation in Darien where there's literally nothing else on the property. So that kind of came up as part of this is there is no current parking standard in the Darien regulations for just a gas station. Those things don't exist. It's usually gas station with service, or a gas station with convenience store, or gas station with something else, it's highly unusual to see only gas station. So the decision would have to figure out how to handle if someone were to build just a gas station, what should the parking standard be? So we talk a little about that in here, and then, as I said, the last sentence doesn't make any sense. I think that was included in error because it refers to quick service, so that's not part of this. So we talk about in here, if the commission were to remove the requirement for a gas station to have 14 parking spaces and a disabled vehicle storage area, what should the standard then be? So think about that as we keep going through this.
But now the disabled comes up later.
And it comes up later. So we'll
Yeah,
get-
so
back
let's
to that.
not, the disabled is item G. That's gonna come up later.
It's going to come up later. So,
So I know it's inside here, but we don't really address it in here.
Right. so
And then we're making, if it's only gas station, parking 0.
well, that's the premise, but we wanted to talk to the commission tonight about that. It would be highly unusual. I cannot think of one, but we need to discuss that. We are going to change the standard. Instead of new standard, it needs to be clear.
Can I clarify something here?
Yeah, of course.
Section 904W, there's 2 pieces to it. Parking standard for motor vehicle service stations. The first part of it, proposal to distinguish between stations that include automotive repair and those that do not. So in that case, the commission is saying that the applicant's proposal is in fact consistent with the town plan of conservation and development, meaning that if a service station is not present, there's no need to provide parking, the parking standard consistent with a service station. The second part of this regulation amendment states that, let's see, clarify the resulting zoning standards for stations that are co-located with a retail store and or a quick service restaurant. So we're referencing a quick service restaurant in this amendment. The commission above is saying that the quick service restaurant is not consistent with plan of conservation and development. So the commission is finding in the last sentence of subsection C here, the aspect relative to quick service restaurants is not consistent with the 2016 plan of conservation and development. So it's really it's a two-part question here. The first part with respect to the parking associated with the service station, the commission is agreeing to and is noting it is consistent with the POCD. The parking related to the quick service restaurant, the commission is saying, no, it is not consistent with the plan of conservation and development because the commission is denying that use.
Kara, I want to
hope-
recognize you 1 second, Kara.
It's a little bit confusing. I hope that makes sense.
I think I got it. There's one thing I wanted, one's a typo
Yeah.
on paragraph B as in boy.
Yeah.
I would just capitalize the word is. This is not.
Oh, yes, yes.
Capitalize is there because we did on the bottom of there. And then relative to this one, section C,
Mhm.
if the proposal is to make the parking spaces 0, what about employee parking?
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. So maybe we just come up with the number of 3, 2, whatever it is.
You just have 2.
2. Okay.
With
That's
that.
okay with the commission? Sure.
That's me. Kara, go ahead.
Well, I guess, if we're looking, I know we're reviewing these with respect to the applicant's proposals with regard to our regulations. But, we just spent a lot of time going over our own, look at our own regulations and discussing in a thoughtful way how to amend and revise our town's regulations in a way that is consistent with our town plan, not a location and application specific reg change, because the standard and threshold for a variance is incredibly onerous and hard to reach. So I think when we're talking about some of these changes, we can look at, and I know the applicant didn't do this, that they didn't, hear some of our feedback and, come and have a, back and forth on proposed regulations that were different than what they proposed, but would have, been something that may have been more reasonable or acceptable in terms of our town plan of conservation and development. And so, I mean, in terms of, right, so if we're going to accept, and it makes sense, right, to change our regulations with respect to gas stations that don't provide service, and then the next questions from there, is there a way to amend the regs with respect to parking? And if there's no, service or accessory use, what that change will look like. And then with respect to gas stations that may not have service, but do have an accessory use, what is that accessory use? And then can the reg say something like, the parking requirements will be XYZ, or that is sufficient for, and that is sufficient for the accessory use, whichever is higher, or something, whether we want to be flexible and make it lower. But I think we need to just look at it, and this may be an opportunity, since we're revising regs, to be more consistent within themselves with respect to parking and minimum square footage, which we just discussed in other zones. And I know with respect, we have to deal with this applicant in particular, because they do have a pending application, but I just think, the opportunity shouldn't be overlooked, that there may be a thoughtful and more modern way of looking at our regs and amending them in a way that makes sense and is consistent with our plan town of conservation and development.
Yes, I think, Kara, that's a good point. And I think what we've done on page 7 is try to make a chart like that. If it's just a gas station, here's how many spaces you need. If it's a gas station and a convenience store, here's how much parking you need. If it's a gas station and a automotive repair. So to try to hit on all of those for clarity's sake.
And I think your second to last sentence in paragraph C, the commission finds that the aspect relative to establish the parking standard consistent with the requirement of accessory retail / convenience store is consistent with the town plan.
Yeah.
Because that's the way we kind of did it. That's the shared, that goes back to like Federal and Corbin and all that. You got two uses there. In this application, the primary use is the gas station. The accessory use is, the first accessory use is the convenience store. The second accessory use is the quick service restaurant.
Well, I guess when we talk about, are they accessory, are they principal uses, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Not only in here.
That's the problem, right? Because we don't have currently, our regs don't contemplate standalone gas stations without service. We don't have currently in our regs parking standards for standalone gas stations without service, unless I'm missing them.
Right.
So
you're spot on.
Okay, so let's move on to D, which is modifications to section 1056.1, the proposal to eliminate the prohibition of retail sales of goods unrelated to motor vehicle service stations and clarifying services provided by motor vehicle service stations. So you may recall section 1056 is a special section of the zoning regulation just dealing with motor vehicle service stations. And there's a number of items in here, and we've said that the commission finds that the changes proposed in section 1056.1 are consistent. And that would be the proposal to, for example, allow self-serve only, and to correct an incorrect reference in 1056.1C. But basically, the regs did not envision self-serve only. This would change that.
Right, and we have multiple self-serve only gas stations in town.
Right. Top of page 5, section 10.
So, sorry, Jeremy, just to further clarify that as well, that would also allow for retail sales of goods unrelated to motor vehicle service stations for gas stations in the town. So right now the regulations only allow the retail sales of goods related to motor vehicle service stations. This would allow the retail sales of goods unrelated to motor vehicle service stations, as is the case at several other gas stations in the town. And the commission is, in these findings, noting that that proposal is in fact consistent with the plan of conservation and development, in addition to what Jeremy already mentioned.
I can buy a pack of gum and a hot dog and a can of soda,
Correct.
right? Which is kind of soda's at the mobile station across the street where it says Mobile Mart. Great.
Hot dog might not be the best example.
That's where I get my hot dogs.
So,
There's a place in Stanford. I get my hot dog there at lunch, it's $1.
so moving on to section 1056.2, the applicant put forth a proposal to specifically allow quick service restaurant by special permit. And the commission has said current regulations do not allow quick service restaurants as accessory uses for gas stations. The commission finds that the proposed regulation amendment is not consistent with the town plan. The next proposal is F.
Any questions on that one? Anybody have any questions on that one?
F is a change to section 1056.3, which talks about motor vehicle service stations that include service and repair of automobiles. The commission finds that there's now a number of motor vehicle service stations, gas stations in Darien, that do not have a building and do not provide repair services. Thus, it would be appropriate to not require such for future gas stations. Therefore, the commission finds that the change to section 1056.3, the changes are consistent with the town plan. In other words, allowing a gas station that doesn't do repair work.
I'm sorry to be annoying. I'm sorry, I know, I'm so annoying.
Go right ahead. You're fine. You're just like the rest of us.
With respect to, right, because there is that state law that, you know, that air and for tires and stuff like that. So while we're not going to require service, can we, I mean, I think still make note so that it's not unclear that we are going to remain consistent, obviously, with all state regulations and laws, including licensing requirement that require air and different kinds of, not real, you know, it's not motor vehicle repair, but it's self-service or whatever you want to call it, and that will continue to be required because it's a state licensing requirement. And I know there's two different licensing, you know, with the state with respect to service stations and gas stations, but if there's any inconsistency, and if I have to look, because I just off the top of my head don't know it, if the state licensing does not require air or other kinds of, you know, oil or whatever it is, wiper stuff, you know, for safety, if it's just gas only, maybe we should think about, given our proximity on and off, you know, that we have so many gas stations because of our location on 95, and a state, you know, a very highly trafficked state route, you know, the post road. If the state licensing for gas only doesn't require that, we should maybe take a little think to that.
Right. I think what's interesting about this section of the zoning, it talks about all major repair and service work shall be conducted entirely with the enclosed building. I think, at least in my opinion, I would not consider air major. Right.
Oh,
So
no,
I think once we put that in the record, that as we can mention that we do not consider air to be major service.
Right.
And you just
So we
don't,
can put that in here. Air.
If the state doesn't require it, for gas only, that maybe we should take a think about. It's not major, but just for like as a traffic and safety concern, given the number of gas stations and our proximity to 95 and the post road, sort of intersecting our town, we probably do have more motorists pulling off if they have issues maybe than some other towns in the state.
I think what we're saying here is you don't want people changing the oil in the parking lot.
That's never going to work.
Yeah.
But if people pull off say if someone pulls off 95 because their tires are really low, or they can sense a problem, and they see on Waze or on their car navigation that there's gas stations, and they pull off into Darien, and then it's like, oh, you're out of luck. Sorry, we just sell beef jerky and give you gas here, but nothing else. Like, we're gonna have stranded motorists, and we don't have lodging really. So like that's we need to think about that.
So great. Jen brought some regulation last time. Okay, you got it.
Next would be G, which is a proposed modification to section 1056.5 to eliminate the requirement for disabled vehicle storage areas for uses which will only be gas stations. And in this case, the commission said it doesn't make sense for you to have a disabled vehicle storage area if all you're doing is selling gas and you couldn't service those. So the commission says that change is consistent with the town plan because, and we'll talk about that further on in the document. So item 10 is talking about consistency with the town plan. 11 and 12.
The only comment I want to make about that on 11, there's some part about provide jobs. I mean, you don't have to get into the weeds on this, but I would argue that there's more people working at a Duchess than there is working at a gas
So that
station.
is where's that?
It's policy number 1 on the bottom of 10.
Okay.
Policies to business conduct. I mean, I don't know what you're doing, but
Okay.
it's, to me, there's the gas station I go to, the Gulf station, has got one guy there. At Duchess, there's 3 people there.
So we'll change that.
I mean, I don't know if you have to change it, but if that's one of the arguments.
Paragraph. Now I want to bring your. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I'm done.
We tried to summarize in 11, 12, and 13. I'm not sure about again try to summarize which are consistent with the town plan, which are not consistent with the town plan, and then at the bottom of page 6 of the document, talk about which parts are adopted, which are denied, which are adopted in part with modifications, denied in part, and then show those on pages 7 and 8.
So that relates back to this.
That's the applicant's proposal.
This is the applicant's
Yes, we
proposal.
worked off the applicant's August 12th proposal
Correct.
that was submitted as part of the application. You'll probably see it online as item 1 or 2 very early on, and we use that as a guidepost.
And you put this in our packets.
Right, so the commission could see what the applicant proposed and what your decision is based on what Fred and I have heard. And if you have any comments on this, let us know tonight or give us a call in the morning, because this will help guide us towards writing the rest of the document, which is the special permit and site plan, which will be a separate written decision. Just easier for clarity purposes to have it separate.
Okay, so remember, this is a general meeting, so this is just us. Does anybody else have any questions on this proposed draft document these guys gave? Anything on any page? Go ahead, Jim. Turn your microphone on, buddy.
I'm used to talking and nobody hearing, so I don't pay too much attention.
Your wife is a very nice woman.
I've just got a general question or an observation, perhaps, on number 11. We're saying that
Question, Jim.
that it conforms with the POCD because there's other people in town not doing what the POCD requires. And that seems like a backwards way of going about this.
You know,
If those that are not doing what they're supposed to, and by supposed to, I mean the terms of their approval, then, I mean, shouldn't we correct them the error of their ways rather than amend the regulations to suit their misbehavior? I'm not expressing this well. But
I think you're right. I read it. I was just reading it now, and I think it's paragraph 11 to me can be taken out because it's not really as relevant as it could be to the decision at hand. And I personally think it could be dropped out without losing anything in terms of substance regarding the decision on this application. And that's really what it's all about. And it's not about other people or what other people are doing. It's really about the applicant's proposal. So I would have no issue, and Fred and I will certainly circle back and discuss it amongst ourselves, but I don't think we would lose anything if we remove that paragraph from this. So,
And just to clarify, Jim, the other gas stations or gas convenience stores like the Gulf Station, which wants to do a renovation, those guys are in compliance with their resolutions.
so I think it starts getting distracting, and I think that's what Jim's point is.
Right.
Why put in a distraction when we just focus on the applicant's proposal? Is it consistent? Does the commission want to approve it? And not worry about what may or may not have gone on. I think 11, I think Jim spotted something there that can easily be removed.
Okay, fine by me.
So I don't know if the commission has any other questions or comments.
Carrie, you're the lawyer, man. Are you still practicing?
No, I mean, I definitely, I appreciate the applicant and pointing out ways to make our regulations more consistent within, so that with other areas of our regs, which, we kind of did ourselves tonight in terms of other areas of our regulations. And that's, has to be an ongoing exercise every couple, because when we amend things based on a specific applicant, you do end up with verbiage changes and, amendments and section changes that are no longer consistent with the overall regs because they're done on an applicant by applicant basis. But to the extent that things were pointed out and things made more consistent, I think that's appreciated, and those should, I agree with what is stated in this draft. Yeah, and
Is it cool that we take out paragraph 11?
oh no, I'm fine with that. I think things that don't apply to the applicant specific application, while it may have been cited as advocacy, isn't necessarily something that we need to incorporate into any resolution.
There's your answer.
Great, thank you. Anything else on what we have so far, which will really drive us forward on, as I said, the separate document, which will be the site plan and special permit. So,
Well, let's just go to the last page 7.
sure.
All right, and page 7, when a site is operated as solar gas station, there are no auxiliary uses, 0 parking
I
space
think
required.
you would suggested 2, which would allow for employee parking.
Okay, everyone good with that? I'm gonna make 2 spaces, one for the guy working there,
And
and
one for the
one
guy
for-
who relieves them.
right, and one
Comes
for the
in.
guy whose boss coming to check on him and count the inventory.
Yep.
Okay,
What about deliveries? What about
it's employee, this is for employees.
people are, I don't know. I just think
Want
it's
to throw a loading zone in there?
Well, I guess,
anywhere else. There's no, I guess studio apartments, we're going to propose requiring 1.5, and and 2 is for 2-bedroom. I don't know. It seems.
You
well,
wanna make it 3?
well,
You can
you
make
can make it 3, but I think the key here is there's no convenience store.
Right.
There's nothing else to do. So I guess you can make it 3, which is the guy who works there, the guy who's coming to relieve them, and whatever. But
Instead of us guessing about it, right, if we are going to change our regs to allow gas stations without motor vehicle service, like, repair. What does the IT, like, what are the traffic, what are the experts?
Right.
I don't know what it should be.
At gas stations, they have where you give the money into somebody, it's called a kiosk.
Yeah.
And those things are 250 square feet. So there's nothing in there except for the guy that works behind the counter, takes your money, and he might sell you lottery tickets, a cigarette later.
Right, but we would count that as a convenience store.
Right, that's a convenience store. So that's
But
the size of the kiosk.
we would require.
So in that instance, if you just have a kiosk, you're going to have 3 parking spaces. I mean, I don't know how much deliveries they have. I mean, that's a good point. If the Coca-Cola machine's coming in to get delivered or something like that, you can make it 3. You can make it 2 plus 1.
I just don't like guessing.
No, it's not really a guess. You need an employee space, right?
Of course you do.
Have an employee space.
Of course you require some parking. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we'd be parking in other retail neighboring, right, or the office building next door, or places. And now we've created an issue for a neighbor.
Right. No, you're not doing that.
So three.
Go
I
through.
don't know. I'm guessing, but
To our knowledge, there really are no ITE standards for just a gas station that we're aware of.
okay.
And we did inquire about that.
Thank you.
We're just not aware of any professional standard that exists with
Okay.
respect to that.
It's so rare to have such a thing.
Right. They do exist in certain parts of the country, but they've disappeared too.
Yeah.
All right, so that's fine. The next one was gas stations, groups are only co-located for yeah, that's what we just talked about that. If it's co-located with a retail store, that the retail store has to comply with our retail convenience store. And the last one is when a gas station auto repair, they have to have a disabled space. That's fine. At the bottom of this, we changed principal to principal. That's fine. And this is all the other stuff that is really in this document, right?
Yep.
This is the same. Okay. So we done with that? Everyone good? You're good, Jim? We're just checking your tonsils. All right, good. All right, you guys good? Next
I'm
item on the agenda. Fantastic. We doing the green sheets or no? We talking
Yeah,
about?
well,
Now we're talking about this?
Fred, did you want to talk a little bit about the special permit and site plan, or do you think we're all set there? Are there any specific issues or concerns that we should discuss with the
Well,
commission?
let's check them off one at a time, right?
Sure, well,
I mean, like relative to sewer and drainage and height
well,
and lighting.
let's go through, Fred? Do you want to go through by topic, traffic?
Yeah, why don't we do that? If the commission could just turn to page, I guess, 3 of this packet, which is noted as deliberations for meeting number 2, April 20th. We lay out some of
Okay. Yep. I got it. Okay.
some of the outstanding issues related to both the site development plan, which the commission deliberated on last week or the week before. And then below that, there's a number of special permit considerations that the commission, I believe, kicked to this evening. So perhaps we can just go run through those special permit consideration quickly.
No, not quickly. This is important. I forgot about this.
To get a sense from commission members what your main concerns are relative to the special permit items.
Yeah, where's page? There's a page 4. Okay, fine. All right, here we go. All right, the first item on here, and it's the green sheet memos. Deliberative meeting number 2. We pushed it back and stated April 20th, but we're doing it tonight because we punted it. All right, the stormwater management. I think the architect and the engineer, which was, I think was Bowler Engineering. Bowler did that.
Yep.
Yeah, they did a great job. That was all signed off by Darren Ostafine, and also Joe Canis, who represented the town at Ostafine, was a peer reviewer. I don't recall any issues at all with the stormwater management system.
Correct.
Okay. The next item is overall site layout, building orientation, location of loading, trash recycling enclosures, and number of parking spaces. let's do the bottom one first. We debated the number of parking spaces. They reduced them. They took out one, which was, one of our ideas. And then it was also signed off by Michael Galante relative to trafficking. So they took off one because you can't get your Cadillac Escalade out and somebody come in at the same time. So that got fixed. The issue relative to the parking spaces, they're designating 2 as employee spaces. They're going to block the dumpster.
Yeah.
Right, they're going to, it's front of the loading zone. So when the loading zone comes in, there's going to be designated spaces. We do or do not like that idea, or what's the
The
answer?
sense that Fred and I got from the commission last time was you were not big fans of the idea, or the concern that it doesn't matter how many deliveries there are, if there's always going to be employees there. And when the guy shows up with the truck, the last thing you want to do is have the employees drop everything, run out, move their car, have the loading guy move, and it's.
So if I'm behind the cash register and I'm taking somebody's money and a loading truck comes in, I got to stop working the cash register to go move my car unless my boss is going to move the car.
Right, and then all the employees would take turns moving their cars. So that, the sense we got from the
Yeah, I
commission
think you're
was that
spot on. I
that was
think
not
you're right.
really the best idea, because there's always going to be employees, and no matter how many deliveries there are, you would still have that occurring.
So, okay, then the other item is they were going to park the delivery truck where there would be no parking until the loading zone opened up, right? And to me, that ends up being a safety issue or a squeeze issue, which nobody was a big fan of that anyway, because that was supposed to be in a no parking zone.
Right. That was the sense we got from the commission, that the commission was
Right.
concerned about that.
So anybody disagree with me on that? Okay, I'm getting heads. All right, so we don't really like the
Jennifer
parking.
Leahy, I believe Jennifer
Jennifer
Leahy
Leahy.
also noted some concerns with respect to the fact that there was no sidewalk in that area. So any customers exiting their vehicles would either have to walk through the loading zone or in back of vehicles to get to the store. So there were some safety considerations around that as well.
Jen was adamant about that. She definitely didn't like that. Right, Jen?
Yep, that's correct. Thanks, Fred.
Then the one above that, location of loading and trash recycling enclosure areas, we just kind of talked about that by default.
Yeah.
Right? The building orientation, this is one of mine. I think the building's crooked. I think it's facing the wrong way. I've said that from day one. It should be facing a road, not facing its back against 330 or the other building next door. I would have switched it. That also goes into architecture number 4, the fishbowl design, related. If you spun the building the other way and they did an alternate site plan, which they never gave us an alternate site plan, we would have been able to quote unquote beta test it. They might have done it internally. We never saw it. I would have switched it, and they could have got an exit out the back from Darien Crossing if they asked them, because you could have put a curb cut in there because it backs up to Darien Crossing, the office park. They didn't do it. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Plus, there's only one curb cut in and out, and there could have been a second one if they did go out the back. So that's my view. I mean, how are you going to word that? I would have worded it as we should have gotten an alternate site plan, and we never got anything. Okay. Anybody disagree with me on that? Do they like the building where it is?
No,
You don't like the real?
no, but Steve, to your point, I think in addition, the curb, the orientation and the curb cut addresses the interlaced parking, traffic, congestion, and blocking of the post road and the circular, weird exit off of the 95 interstate onto the post road, and the left-hand turn issue, right? Which left-hand turn, initially we were like, we don't know if we love that. And then hearing from the traffic experts, left-hand turn was preferable from a traffic perspective, looking at it from traffic and congestion perspective. But then that led to additional pedestrian safety concerns. And if an alternate site plan and possibilities of working with neighboring buildings and neighboring property owners on additional curb cuts, or even the State Department of Transportation. It could have alleviated that like mess of traffic, congestion, pedestrian safety, parking, left-hand turn, all that stuff is like interconnected, and it's unsolvable unless an alternate site plan was presented, which it wasn't.
Yeah, we never got it. Okay, so I think we're on the same page on that. And some of these items on Fred and Jeremy's bullet sheet definitely overlap and are interconnected, just as Kara just said. Landscaping, screening, fencing, noise consideration, HVAC mechanicals. HVAC mechanicals, I think they're fine. They were screened them the best they could. Landscaping on the frontage on Boston Post Road, I think it was fine. I don't think ARB ever really signed off on it. They did move trees around in different colors and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think what they did is going to be fine. The fencing, relative to landscaping frontage, they're not touching any of this stuff that's to the, I call it the east, which is to the left, which is all the land that's not theirs, right? That's the state land, the buffer.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's all, that's not being touched. So you get that's partially screening. Fencing, there's a little bit of fencing in the back.
Yeah, not much fence.
Not much fencing. It's on two sides in the back.
Right.
They might have a chain link fence to keep people out of the wetlands. But whatever
Very
it
limited
is,
amount of
it's
fencing.
fine. They're not doing a whole lot of screening because for the building next door, which is 230, 320, 330, because those guys complain, right? But it's in the back. It's not required. It's on the street. It is what it is. But then screening out the loading, trash, recycling areas, do they have anything there? There's nothing.
They put some
Screen behind the
plantings
building,
in the back to try to hide that dumpster as best as they could. So the trees in the back would help block, 320, 330, that building, you may recall, is very close to the property line.
Right.
And if you're on the second or third floor, you're looking down, there's, as Ms. mentioned during the hearing, there's no way to screen the dumpster.
Right.
They're 30 to 40 feet high, 30 feet higher.
Right.
And they're right on top of you. So they did put some plantings in. I think one plant, those some plantings to try to screen that a little bit.
Okay. So
But did we
that's
ever-
what.
And I mean, we kept hearing that like everything was not the final and things are movable, and so do we even know where the dumpster's going to be, or if windows are are real windows, not real windows,
We
blacked
do.
out, not real windows, blacked out, real windows? I don't know. And I feel like every time they had someone come in, they were like, well, no, this isn't the real final plan.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so why are we discussing this? I don't know. Where I feel like, I can think of other, and to pull a Steve Olvani, other recent applicants, like I'm thinking of, the Darien Playhouse and dumpster place it, and dumpster screening was something they addressed and was really considered, and pedestrian walkway in addition was made part of the conditions of approval, right? So taking into account the dumpster and how the dumpster impacted other, neighboring businesses and properties, and taking account, things that can be done to make pedestrian walkway safer and more walkable, which is definitely within our town plan of conservation and development. And that was sort of not really addressed or considered. And just when we would ask about it, it was like, well, that's not really the final plan. And you're like, oh, okay.
I mean, eventually the final plans get attached. When you go into the resolution, it says and plan number. It's got the number, the date, and all that focus.
Right, but it's hard to even consider, because if we raised anything, it was just sort of like, we can move it, that'll get moved, that's different, that's not real. I don't know.
Noise considerations. Were there any noise considerations? I don't remember that.
Not really. Noise was not a big factor here.
Right.
I think one of the keys was at the last hearing, went from 24 hours down to 19 hours a day, but they are surrounded by the turnpike, the building at 320, 330 Post Road on one side, the parking for that office park on the other side. So noise didn't really come up to be a huge issue.
Okay, on to the next one, lighting. Right, the lighting canopy, associated lighting with fueling areas. We had to make sure that the lighting is inside the canopy, so there's no things that come out. I mean, I gave them pictures and whatnot. They said they're going to do that. That's the current standard versus the ones where the lighting's down and it's a hanging light. So I think they took care of that in the fuel areas. On building light pole lighting in parking areas, they have lighting in different stanchions and whatnot around the parking lot and probably ballards.
Yeah, that was not really an
Those
issue that
wasn't
came
an
up.
issue. It really didn't happen. And there was a couple, some kind of, I mean, I don't know if ARB never signed off on it. They sometimes they like gooseneck lighting, sometimes they don't,
Yeah, parking lot lighting did not seem to be a big issue
It
during the
wasn't an
public hearing
right.
process.
Great, okay. Next, architecture staff recommendations, the commission decide to architecture considerations following the ARB process. You guys worked with them on the design. It's supposed to be New England design, right? It's not something that's out of like Florida. ARB never, they went back to ARB in the Senate when they went back again, right?
The ARB reviewed it, I believe it, and sent a letter dated October 26, 2020. We'll take a look at that letter and reference it in the decision.
Okay, but I don't know if they ever got a final report from ARB.
I think that October 2020 letter was what they got.
Was the last report. Okay. Fishbowl design, windows on one side. We talked about that 3 times. I personally don't think that they comply with their own internal fishbowl design security, but that's going to come up on the next page, and we're going to talk about that in a second too. To Kara's point, there's only windows on one side, and the windows do not go the whole length of the building because there's back of the house on either sides. Some of the stuff that was blocking the windows, they took them out, and they're still blacked out windows, but they moved my cousin Vinny's ladder machine, which blocks the view, according to the site plan, according to the floor plan that they gave us. That's just a fact, right? Any questions on those 2 items before we jump into special permit application stuff? Good. Now this is where it gets important. Special permit, as you guys know, is all encompassing, and it relates to traffic and hours and whatnot.
That'd be section 1005, correct?
Okay. I want to try not to skip around, but I am going to skip around, so sorry. The traffic reports that were submitted were based upon 24-hour operations, and 2 to 4 fuel trucks a week. Okay. So for argument's sake, the fuel trucks could come at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Now it's closed at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's closed for those 5 hours. So the fuel trucks can't go at 2 o'clock in the morning anymore. So that changes things. And I'm only going to get on this one aspect too, and then we'll get on some of the other stuff later. The other item is I had the guy do the math based upon the storage that's underground, which is a fact because it's on the site plan, based upon a good gas station, the number of gallons that they're going to sell, and the storage and the size of the trucks that they have in their system. I said the number was 6 to 8, and the consultant who did the traffic report said it was at least 6. And he agreed with our math because that was the math problem I gave him. Okay, so if you couple the fact that it's not 24 hours anymore and they can't deliver gas overnight, and you couple the fact with it's not 2 to 4 trucks a week, it lands up being like 7 a week, which by my math is 1 a day. That means there's inherent flaws in the existing traffic report. Yes, we found that out towards the end, but they switched the timing towards the end, and the math problem was towards the end. So that's relative to that. That's the problem that I have with traffic report. The other thing that I think is important is our peer reviewer in the letters that he wrote said it's going to be a significant increase in traffic. Our peer reviewer and both the applicant went to the legal traffic authority. The legal traffic authority submitted a letter for the record that said this will have a significant impact on traffic. In my career, on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and yours is Hubble Aluminum. I don't know if we've ever gone against the Legal Traffic Authority.
That was the January 26, 2021 letter.
That's from the
Legal traffic.
legal, and it was signed by, is it signed by the chairman of the commission or is it signed by the chief of police?
I have to double check who signed it.
Okay, so, and I think in the end, the applicant said that the Legal Traffic Authority, they don't agree with them. You know, it's, those guys got a lot of time, if you ask me. What else? We just talked about the hours of operation reduced. That's something that we kind of sort of wanted. We didn't permit to, they did it, but again, that changes the operations of the building because you can't have deliveries overnight. Pickup and delivery times, they gave us some of that stuff. We talked about where the delivery truck's going to be in a no parking area. So that's going to be a little bit of a problematic issue. Principal versus accessory use, size volume, individual use relative to, that's the part where relative to deliveries and fuel, I think they admitted that they're going to have more fuel deliveries than they originally envisioned. Am I right with that?
I don't recall exactly, but certainly that
He
came up at the
100% said 6. I know
the
that.
last hearing.
Yeah. And going back to the site plan thing, if, and I mean, I don't want to jump around. Can we say something about there's no electric charging stations?
I don't think you could deny it based on that reason, but certainly that you had mentioned that during the public hearing. But
I mean, that's a
it
fact
can
of
be
it.
mentioned, but I don't see how. It's not. If the commission were to deny this, that wouldn't be.
It's not a
the strongest
major point.
argument.
Okay, that's fine. We just did that page. Now I'm on the last page. Hours deliveries, week up, pickup, fuel deliveries. Yeah, there it is. You got there 4 versus 7 tankers per week. That's 1 a day. Fuel recycling, box trucks, tractor trailers, recycling. Okay, what am I missing?
Brad, is there anything that anything else we need to cover? Any areas that you can think of off the top of your head?
I think we got most of.
I'm not at security of fishbowl yet.
I think we got most of the feedback we're looking for here, unless commission members have anything additional that they think, that, you know, they would like to note with respect to any of these items. You can let us know now. You can
Call us tomorrow morning if you need.
No, I mean, let us know now. I mean, I did all the talking. I talked to everybody. I would like you guys to chime in too. Larry, your light is on. You have anything I missed relative to this one piece?
No, I think we discussed this pretty heavily last time, and I think your overview was pretty consistent with everything we said last time. So
Jim,
no need for me to repeat it again.
Okay, Jim, anything you missed? Anything I missed?
I think the closing down, which will probably have some impact on the sale of gasoline, although not too many people go out at 2 a.m. to get gasoline.
Yeah, I agreed 100%. But me personally, I do on Sunday nights or at Saturday nights, and that's when the fuel trucks there filling up the tank over on Hope Street.
Okay. Well, I think it has a
Oh gosh.
greater impact on traffic, because you're going to sell 95% of the volume of gas that you would if you were running 24 hours, and yet you're cramming those gas sales into 75% of the day. So I endorse what you said.
Thank you, sir. Kara, anything else to add?
Good.
I totally agree. I think the cutting the hours and the math sort of calculations, deriving it from the site plan and the underground storage tanks, and having, getting the, presenting the map and then having their expert agree, I think really sort of solidifies that that is a real issue that both sides and their experts agree upon. And it will affect traffic, and it's a problem.
I'll add one thing here, Steve, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead, sir.
The applicant, of course, presented this proposal as the convenience store and the quick service restaurant as being accessory uses to the gas station. During the public hearing, quite a bit of testimony was put into the record by members of the public and some of the attorneys that were representing the public relative to the principal versus accessory uses, arguing that the convenience store and the quick service restaurant were in fact principal uses on the site, co-principal uses along with the gas station. I don't know how commission members feel about that.
No, I think you're right. There was some talk in there that this chicken company's chicken sandwich is better than Chick-fil-A. That's a principle.
So the sense is, I think it was Mr. Maslin and Mr. Gleason made those arguments. Is the sense from the commission that those arguments gain traction or not?
Emphatically, yes.
Okay.
I mean, look at these guys, those two wrote the the plan of conservation and development. I mean,
They
say that it's not, if they say that this does not conform with the plan of conservation and development, they don't have to prove to me that they know what they're talking about.
I mean, I think the applicant is emphatic that the gas station's a primary use and that the convenience store is an accessory use. I think the argument that those two lawyers and the public testimony envisions that they're co-principal uses, right? And
I guess, can staff just enlighten me? Because I thought there were valid, right? I thought Attorney Suchins made good, solid arguments, and was assertive in her position on behalf of the applicant that it wasn't, and no reason to not believe that. And I think she was compelling in sort of why it wasn't, and the accessory use, right, based on the grocery store and this, that the convenience store was not an accessory, was an accessory use, not a primary use. And I agree that attorneys Maslin and Gleason are both, equally with Attorney Suchin as respectable and as knowledgeable. But I guess for me, the question with that point is, what's the relevance, right? Like, why is it important whether something is an accessory versus a principal use? And, Fred or Jeremy, if you could kind of elaborate on that, I would find that useful.
I think that's a Jeremy question.
Well, I think in this case, one thing which we talk about is in the regs, as it goes, no one's going to make the argument that the quick service restaurant of 100 square feet is a principal use. That's clearly accessory. What we have to look at here also is the zoning regulations of the service business zone. What is allowed as of right in that zone? What's allowed by special permit? Certainly that zone does not allow retail stores. There's been a lot of pressure on Darien through the years to allow retail uses in the service business zone near the Darien border. That has not changed.
Right, that came up with postmodern, remember?
Right, because one of the issues is, I think it's clear what happened when Norwalk started allowing retail stores near the border. They got Costco, Home Depot, Walmart, and Home Goods, and I'm sure there's others I'm leaving out. So the commission has kept it quite limited in terms of automobile service type things, larger restaurants. Bertucci's, for example, is a large restaurant. You have car washes,
Services.
but you don't have retail stores.
And isn't sort of, right, it's not like to sort of look down on Norwalk, but I mean, I know there's significant traffic issues I mean, I drive it daily and I know, I mean, it's significant and it's dangerous, you know, at that exit that borders by the Doubletree, the Darien Norwalk border, and the backing up out of that exit from 95, with people trying to make the right-hand turn to get to arguably Costco or Walmart or Chick-fil-A or wherever. But our plan of, you know, so we look at reg changes, right, in light of, does this change, is it supported, you know, is it aligned with our town plan of conservation and development? And I think, you know, what you just brought up, Jeremy, is really what strikes me is our town plan of conservation and development and numerous subcommittees and special committees and our Chamber of Commerce, and I mean, the list is endless, have made real significant efforts over a number of years, as did, you know, previous, you know, planning and zoning commission members and other, you know, first selectmen, about making our downtown a destination, pedestrian friendly, walkable, safe, close to transit. And if we start having competing retail areas outside of our central downtown areas, right, the Federated, Neuron Heights area, and, you know, the downtown area, you know, that's a problem, and it's not walkable, and it creates traffic and safety issues, having kids trying to cross the post road where it's double lanes and no sidewalks and no cross to get to another store. So I think that's to be considered in that retail, the regs were designed to not allow retail in this area for a reason. And it's the other things we're trying to promote in the town plan of conservation development, looking at the whole town holistically.
Yeah. Okay. So where are we here? We're still hours delivery drive finish up. All right, we're gonna get into traffic, the last thing. So we talked about hours deliveries for a week, fuel truck tankers 4 versus 2, but we talked about that. Food retail box trucks, we talked about that. Rate sheet, that's just, you know, we talked about all those things. I'm on the top of page, the last page of this green sheets. The next is on-site security. We already talked about the fishbowl design, floor plan iteration. We talked about that. They adjusted it a little bit. It's not a final design. Internal procedures and training. You know, that doesn't matter. All right. Then the last thing is traffic. Generation of 88 entering vehicles and 88 exit vehicles during the AM peak hours. This is me. You did this for me, huh? Fred wrote this. This is me. My niece yells every time about this. 88 going in, 88 going in, 72 going in, 72 going in the afternoon peak. That was the whole exercise where it takes, there's a car got to go in every, you know, 60 in a minute, or this is right here. It's, you know, 72 entering vehicles in the AM peak. That's more than 1 a minute. But in his testimony, he said it takes 1.45 seconds to get out. So you have more than one going in per minute, and you have, you know, it takes you 1.5 minutes to get out. That's math work, you know. I mean, those guys, our traffic consultant, which is Michael Galante, he did not. He said they both said it's going to be a change in traffic and a change in volume. Galante said it's more significant and it's less than this. Relative to the left-hand turn, we talked about that a little bit, or actually a lot of it. Galante wants it to have a left-hand turn. You know, the other town doesn't. The existing tenant really does not promote that.
Is that true? I thought didn't the applicant say that the notion that their left-hand turn wasn't allowed was not a real traffic sign, and that the arrow was pointing straight, which really means left because you can't drive straight because.
The answer to that is when you leave Dutchess today, the sign clearly says make a right, right? There's a sign there, but that's not
That's not a real sign. It's not like a real official traffic.
It's not a DOT sanctioned sign. It's a
Okay.
tenant sign. It's brown.
Right.
It's a tenant sign.
Yeah,
The
right.
existing tenant today is suggesting that you make a right. The arrow painted on the ground says that's right. The bottom line is you're allowed to make a left out of there. Our traffic consultant said you can make a left out of there. You know,
Okay.
we're not gonna change that.
So do both traffic consultants, the peer reviewer, which was our traffic consultant, and the applicants believe that traffic, for traffic's sake, making a left is preferable?
Correct. Correct.
And doesn't that then lead to the safety issue of that crosswalk right there without
Yeah,
signaling or anything?
yeah, they can bring it in. I mean, the bottom line is the expert testimony from our peer reviewer and the stuff that he submitted said it's going to be a significant increase in traffic at the property and a significant increase in parking. He's the expert. That's what he said. That expert testimony report went to the Legal Traffic Authority. The Legal Traffic Authority of the town of Darien agreed with Michael Galante, who's the town's peer review expert. He submitted a report. You know, there was a bunch of anecdotal stuff where I've been there and Larry's been there and other people have been there and all that stuff. But the expert witness, expert person that put in the report said significant increase. They bantered back and forth in the methodologies. They finally got on the same page. My only answer to that or supplement to that, after all those reports are done, after all they were signed off, then they changed the hours. And then they decided that it's going to be 7 tanker trucks a day versus, 2 to 3 a week.
Yeah, I think,
That's going to change. That's going to change your methodology.
yeah, I think certainly the issue, there was a lot of discussion during the many hearing nights about traffic and left turns. And we had the 3 people involved, Mr. Adams on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Galante on behalf of the town, and then the Legal Traffic Authority also spoke and chimed in via their letter. So there was a lot of testimony on traffic. Certainly the special permit standard in section 1005 deals with traffic as well.
Great. And we did have neighbor concerns and people looked at it. And according to the class that we all took, regular run-of-the-mill people, lay people can talk about traffic and their own personal views. And they did. But at the end of the day, we're going to rely on the experts. Right?
Yep.
Everybody agree with me on that?
Jim Rand has a question.
Jim Rand, go ahead, sir.
I don't know if we just blithely agree with the experts. 2 thoughts. But first, you had this guy that did his own traffic study, and he had lots of numbers and so on and so on and so on. And the applicant blew him off. Are you a licensed traffic engineer? No, I'm not. I'm just a guy. And we were, from my perspective, I felt like I was being instructed to ignore him. The second thing is the testimony, if that's the right terminology, that I value the most is the traffic authority. These guys are there 24/7, 365 days a year. They know when it's jammed. They know, they live with the actual experience every day. They're even in the Duchess to get lunch or whatever. That's practical on the ground. It's not, they weren't asked to collect data, but the sum total of their experiences, I think, bears at least as much, if not more, than a couple of experts.
Agreed.
And I think it's our job to decide which alternative, if you consider that there are 2 ways of looking at this thing, is the more reasonable. Thank you.
and credible. I mean, if you have two experts, you can agree with one and disagree with the other. You know, those two guys are not on the same exact page, you know, so it's, as a commission, we have to look at the most credible expert, you know, that we believe, in our opinion, that who is most credible. You know, if they both said the same exact thing, that's fine. I don't think they did. Larry? Any
Yeah,
questions?
I mean, I'll just make the comment that our traffic expert said that there would be a significant increase in traffic. I recall when I was running for this position and we had a public forum hosted by the DAR and town hall, and we responded to questions from the community. And one of the questions I got was, what can we do to alleviate the traffic congestion issues in Darien? And so I feel pretty strongly that making significant increases to traffic is not what, you know, the community really wants from us. So, you know, I put a lot of value on what our experts said in terms of the traffic and what the community is looking for.
Okay,
Great.
so,
Agree.
okay, Jennifer, okay.
So
So
it's everybody.
what we're gonna do, Fred and I will draft everything up, and we hope to get draft resolutions in your packets this Thursday afternoon, which would give you guys time to read it over the weekend. And then if there's changes, let us know Monday. In a case like this, obviously, a lot of reading, but that way on Monday, Fred and I could, if there's a subsequent red line version, we can have that ready for Tuesday, with the goal of voting on Tuesday,
You want to vote on Tuesday, the 11th.
Tuesday the 11th.
And do we have a meeting? This thing ends.
This is not, right. The deadline is approximately May 20th. The problem we have is, although the commission meets the 18th, 2 members cannot make it on the 18th. So it's not really great to vote with only 4 members out of 6 there. So that's why we're really gearing up to have all 6 members present next Tuesday for a vote.
Everybody got that, right? Okay, so we got homework.
Right.
All right,
Thank you all.
we're done? Cool. All right, we're done with that. Thank you, everybody. I think we beat that one into the ground. Next on here is business site plan application number 194H as in Harry, special permit Felix F. Callari, Inc., doing business as BMW of Darien, 136-140 Ledge Road. I thought we wrapped this one up last week.
I think we did. If commission members have any thoughts on BMW, give me or Fred a call. We are also going to try to get this on for a vote next week. I know we've talked extensively about, you know, the service building, and I think one of the things we're going to try to do in the resolution, because it's a big project, you got 3 buildings being constructed while the business is still running. They're not shutting the business. They're going to keep operating the business while they're installing a new car wash, while they're adding on to the front sales building, and then the service building is going to be constructed. So it's really trying to get the resolution to address what work needs to be done with which building. So for example, when do the drainage needs improvements need to be made? Is that part of the front building or the back building? For example, the landscaping with the back building needs to be done with the back building.
Great.
The landscaping in the front should be done with the front building. So part of the resolution is going to have to cover topics like that to try to drill down to give the applicant the guidance they need on certificates of occupancy, because it's going to be project will probably take longer than necessary, because versus if you were just starting from scratch, working
Right.
all 3 buildings at once. So
It's actually it's only 2. Well, you're calling it for car wash a 3rd building. I gotcha.
Yeah.
And with regard to like the landscaping in the front, they're changing a couple colors of trees in the
yeah,
front.
that's not a big deal. That'll be part of the front
Yeah.
building. So a lot of the resolution will be spent in terms of trying to piece together I'll call it the different phases, the different pieces. I would recommend the commission grant a 2-year approval, because it's, you know, these are to get the job done. The sense I got from the commission was you were generally satisfied with the changes the applicant put forth to address the neighbor concerns. So we'll write it up that way. That's
Okay.
based on what I heard.
Cool. Any questions on that one? I think we beat it down last time too. Good. All right, next. Special permit application number 258 Bees Boy La Taquera Inc., Darien Place LLC, 1077 Boston Post Road. This is the proposed taco place from Greenwich that wants to open up in Darien, in the last piece of the puzzle in the backside of the old playhouse, all the way to the left. The neighbor next door, their Darien Sport Shop, liked the idea. They had the shared parking agreement. We're going to have the shared parking agreement survey. It's the site plan, the as-built survey is part of the Darien Place, so we're going to know the number of parking spaces at the end of the day. We talked about it a little bit, or a lot of it. I think Mr. Genovese did send in a letter that he's not in favor of it, but for the most part, I think it was. I think to me, it seems like a pretty good use. Questions, comments? You want to go first? Karen, go right ahead.
A question. And I can go back. I tried to watch the whole video, but I will watch it all. But there's a lot that happened last meeting, so I didn't get to watch all of it. But I did start to watch it. I watched most of it. But are they applying for a liquor license? Like, are they quick service? I don't have clarity on that.
It is a quick service as defined in our regulations, because you would order from a board. There's no menu when you sit down and get a menu. The menu is up on a board on a wall, and they would have a liquor license because they have a little small bar area, about 4 or 5 seats, and they do serve beer and margaritas. They may serve other things, but those are the 2 things that I think was evident based on the record.
So menu is what I guess I'm just.
It's not table service.
Oh, it's not.
There's no ways.
Well, they bring the food out to you. Think of like
Chipotle or
we could say Panera Bread type thing where
Panera Bread.
Cozy.
Where?
Yeah.
Cozy. Remember Cozy?
Yeah, but they didn't.
Yes.
Panera Bread was like that. You sat at your table and they brought over your salad.
No, Panera had tables.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. The definition of quick service is a restaurant where the primary mode of service is food being ordered from a posted menu or display, and/or where food is served on a tray or in a container to allow for consumption on or off premises. So that would be the nature of what they're doing here, quick service.
So no waitresses, no waiters. So
the nature of the waiter is he brings your food out to you.
That's an expediter.
But
yeah.
They wouldn't bring it out to, like, they're not just doing outdoor seating.
Yeah. Do you remember Panera Bread?
I do.
Remember you ordered your salad and your soup and you sat down at a table and they give you a number, you put the thing there and the guy comes out.
I remember that. But like, are you gonna bring yourself a margarita?
No, they bring it out to you.
I don't know.
So they have waiters and waitresses.
They have waiters because they're not taking your order.
It's a quick service restaurant as per our regs.
Okay. As long as so the quick service definition is what, and does quick service have different parking requirements than a normal, not normal, I guess, than a full service restaurant?
No, it does not.
Oh, it has the same parking, so it doesn't matter.
Let me just double check that, but I don't.
Don't matter.
They'll probably serve tequila shots to be quick service.
Quick.
You're right, Kara. The quick service restaurant is 1 space for each 150 square feet of gross floor area.
Okay.
No parking requirement for areas in the basement or attic. And the patron bar area would be 1 space for each 20 square feet of gross patron floor area. Whereas full service, the patron bar area is the same, but full service restaurant is 1 space for each 100 square feet. So if you think of 1,000 square feet, full service restaurant would require 10 spaces, quick service 6 or 7.
Great.
Okay, so it's not like a major change.
Yeah, I think the space was, 3,000 square feet. Not even.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's less than 2,000, 1,009.
It came from retail, and I did see the traffic study that Attorney Zavatakis submitted, and I do remember that discussion we had originally with the Darien Playhouse and traffic and the shared traffic. And I saw the Zangrillo, Ms. Gina Zangrillo submitted her comments about that. So looks like they can work it out.
Okay. Yeah, and Fred Conti's what was request was a parking count at the end of the day.
They're working on shared parking.
But the parking count at the end of the day is the what the hell is it called? The as-built survey, which is the as-built survey is required for the Darien Playhouse over things, so you don't have to require the same thing twice.
Okay. Oh, that's a good. Oh, right, because they still have the as-built at the end of it. And then I guess the only other question I had. So it was either the traffic report that was submitted or Attorney Zabatakis's presentation or letter submission with the application was that Board of Ed parking would be available to the applicant. And I just want clarification if that's the case. I don't remember exactly. And I guess that might be the as-built for the overall development, like
Good,
Steve
didn't say anything.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Jim, your light is on. You good?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm good.
Larry, you good? You okay? Any questions? Jen?
Kara, to expand, sorry guys, just to expand on Kara's point regarding the traffic study, the applicant's consultant did note in the report that they asked the commission to perhaps consider designating 1 or 2 or 3 spots as sort of 15-minute parking in close proximity to the restaurant. I don't know if that makes sense to the commission or not, but that was one solution they suggested in regard to some of the parking issues around the proposed use.
that.
I don't think we want to get into that because that's not our parking lot. And Gina and company and the other participants at the parking thing, they're not going to like that either.
Right, but other applicants, if Panera had it, it's because it was Panera's lot,
Correct.
right? And they can make their own spots that way, but we can't make shared parking.
Yeah, this is shared parking. It's a different story.
Okay, we'll draft something. It won't be for next week. Definitely not for the next week. Maybe the week after, the week after that.
Yeah, did you give me a thumbs up on that one?
Yes.
Yes, you did. Okay, cool.
Great.
Next, last
Taqueria,
one.
Steve.
I'm sorry?
Taqueria. I don't know what you said, but it was definitely not, just so
Say corned beef.
it's clear on that name of the restaurant moving into Darien.
Corned beef and Guinness. Coastal site plan review number 106B as in boy, flood zone revision application number 96B as in boy, landfilling and getting application number 499, Michael and Nancy Hurling, trustees, 89 5 Mile River Road. This is Yax's house that they're tearing it down and
It's a
they're
rebuild of
starting
the house. The state of Connecticut wrote a letter. The hearing was fairly uneventful.
Right. This is the guy that he was gonna fix the house and not raise it, and he was gonna get into the 50% rule, and now they just decided just to rip it down to the foundation and build a new house. And the guy's happy as a clam.
Okay. We'll draft something for a couple.
Everybody good?
weeks from now.
Larry, you got a question?
I'm good, but we were running late that night and I just didn't spend a lot of time asking. But since it's a little earlier tonight, Jeremy, do you know what drove their decision? Did they ran into some issues with what they were working on, or?
I don't know. It's a good question, Larry. I don't know for certain. It could have been the fact that they were bumped right up against that 50% max. I think at that point they were doing so much work. This new house gave them the flexibility to basically do whatever they want without that financial limit. I didn't get a clear answer, but that's the guess I have.
Okay. You just mentioned the state wrote a letter. I don't know what that was about.
The state of DEP, you're going to see a lot more from them. They noted to us that they want to comment on more of our applications, but basically they talked about water quality, making sure there's something addressing water quality. I think in their letter they talked about the deck or the float that's currently there, making sure that the stockpile is out of the flood zone. If there is a place for it to be out of the flood zone, I'm not sure there is. It was not an eventful letter, but it was a letter nonetheless that we'll reference.
That's all. No, I'm supportive. It was curiosity questions.
That's fine. No,
Thank you.
we're not at 3 hours yet. We're good. Okay, we're good with that. We're done.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So now we're moving on to approval of minutes. April 6th, the minutes. These are minutes from our public hearing that we had relative to the planning and housing zoning proposals for the state. And then we had additional minutes with regards to the 7-Eleven deliberations, right? Yeah, 7-Eleven deliberations. So I wanted to make sure that we were spot on that. What else do we have? Then we talked about federals had a little bit of thing inside here relative to the phase where we gave them some stuff. A house on, Jennifer, I think her name was Jennifer Kling, and Michael Kling's house on Long Neck Point.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments, Scribner's errors, changes? I know the minutes, and then on the end is the resolution, which we can't change anyway. We held these up for a little while. I want to make sure the minutes for our deliberations with regards to 7-Eleven were spot on, and they made some adjustments and changes. So I think they're all perfect now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim Rand, Jennifer.
Anybody looking for a motion to approve the minutes as submitted? That's Jennifer. Looking for a second? That's Larry. All's in favor?
5-0, thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Next thing, Chairman's report. I want to try to keep this quick and brief. There's a couple things on there. We have some really good projects that are moving forward at, it's a new warp speed. If you guys remember, as part of the federal project, they had to widen Norotan Avenue and provide a second turning lane at Norotan Avenue on the corner of Norotan Avenue and Heights Road. That's been done. So now there's 2 lanes of traffic at Heights Road, so you don't get backed up anymore. The Walgreens opened a week ago from today. The new Walgreens is open. It opened up on Tuesday. The new light stanchions in the parking lot are in. They're really tall. They look like there's something out of Boston where it looks like a candle in the middle with a dome on top. I think they look really pretty. They put birch trees inside the islands. There's 3-legged birch trees, which I had when I was a kid at my parents' house. I think those look fantastic. The demo permit has been applied for relative to the old Walgreens. There's a sign in the building that says this thing's being torn down. As soon as that thing gets torn down, they're really going to be off to the races. They're starting to put the fake rock facade on the West Avenue side, which faces the other houses on West Avenue. And if you go over to the office building, which is 40 Heights Road, they have a bunch of different bricks, sample boards. So I think they're trying to match that brick dead on with the existing brick there, because there's the 3 buildings in 3 different colors. The brand new Walgreens does not match the same exact colored brick as the Chase Bank, but maybe they're not supposed to. That's really not my bailiwick, but that thing's moving really fast, and I think from everything I've seen to date, I think looks fantastic. Next week, we're going to see the Corbin District come back one more time. They have some lot line revision that we just have to bless one more time. It's related to something that's got to do with a survey. They're ready to close their construction financing for that one. They've already noticed their demo permits for their buildings on Corbin Drive that are going to come down. Those notices were in the paper. You may or may not see the signs on the building soon that said these buildings are going to be demolished. You have 2 weeks to tell. And they expect to break ground or demo those buildings next month, which is in the month of June, which I think is really fun. This one I'm going to skip because I didn't ask Jeremy about it. The other thing that I think is really cool, as I said earlier, this is Cinco de Mayo Eve. Bodega has their outdoor dining all set up. They wanted it in for Cinco de Mayo. They got it in for Cinco de Mayo. So I'm proud of those guys, and thank you everybody for supporting that and getting it going. The 1020, that outdoor patio, I asked them to get it done by Mother's Day. They're going to miss this weekend, but it's going to be open next month. But they swear they got a whole bunch of outdoor seating on the alley in the back and in the front for Mother's Day. So any mother in this call that wants to go to 1020, I could probably make a phone call and make sure you guys get a table. And I'm not a mother, so I don't know. And my mother is not with us anymore, so I can't help you on that. That's pretty much it for me. I think we're moving great. We got a lot of applications that are big and takes a lot of time. I think we're good. I think the one we have Parklands is going to be what, next week or something like that?
No, next week is what you said. It's really 3 items on next week's agenda. It's going to be that Corbin, changes to the Corbin lot lines and some other things. We'll have the 7-Eleven draft resolution and the BMW draft resolution. So hopefully, I think the meeting hopefully won't be long as we can get people's comments early. And that way we can make as many changes as we want so you can see them prior to the meeting. And that way at the meeting, if everything's okay, we're good to go. So it's a fairly short agenda next week.
Fantastic. That's cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. I think we're in great shape. The other is any other business requires 2/3 vote. Seeing none, there's no proposals on the table. We're going to skip on that. We just talked about the next meeting. Our next meeting is the 11th. We talked about that. And there's a special meeting on the 18th, which is, that's dedicated for somebody?
Dedicated for Parklands. So that's going to be the 18th, but only 4 of you can make it.
But I can't come. Wait, I can't come that day.
Right.
I mean, I can, but I can't.
Right.
You might have to come.
Kara's
Yeah.
recused.
But
I mean, I'm available. I just.
Jim, Jennifer, Steve, and George will be there. So thank you. We're
so
good.
she's recused, but we don't need her for the quorum. All right, that's cool. Fine, great. That's it for me, folks. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Jim Rand. Jim Rand's the winner. Jen Leahy. All in favor? That's it, folks. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
10. You're close.
What did I say? 10.
You said 10 o'clock.
So yeah, the key on this is